Welcome to our epic ocean, where critical solutions to a planet in peril are brought to the surface. Our epic ocean celebrates all that is epic about the ocean and why it is the planet's most vital resource. And now to our host, Rich Gurman.
Hey everybody, this is Rich, and super honored to have Louie Schwartzberg here today. Louie's got 30 plus years experience as an award-winning producer, director, cinematographer, known for creating breathtaking images for feature films, TV shows, documentaries, commercials. He's worked with the likes of Steven Spielberg and Oliver Stone, Francis Ford Coppola, Ridley Scott. Been featured in movies, one of my favorites, American Beauty, Crash, E.T., Jerry Maguire, Men in Black. I could go on and on. And today we're going to discuss some of his more recent projects like Gratitude Revealed, Moving Art, Fantastic Fungi, and Visual Healing. Louie, welcome to the show. I super appreciate you spending time with us today.
It's great to be here with you, Rich.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
That's good. So I want to dive right in. You have the unique distinction of filming flowers via time-lapse 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for how long now? Like 4 decades?
4 decades for sure, yes.
That is some serious passion and commitment. And I want to start by saying I am by no means in your league as a filmmaker and never will be. But I have videotaped and photographed dolphins and whales every day for the past 12 years right here in Laguna Beach. And I can't remember, it was an interview I saw with you where you talked about how you've pretty much done the same thing over and over for so long. And like you, I paddle in the exact same spot, but it's always different, right? The color of the water, of the sky, the clarity of the water, the clouds, the wind, the waves, the light, whether it's sunrise, sunset, afternoon, whatever time of day. And then, of course, what I see out there, be it dolphins or whales, we have different species based on the time of the year. Right now we have gray whales migrating by. We have 100-foot-long blue whales in the summer. And the behaviors and the interaction is always different based on their mood, based on their time of day. And you have famously said that beauty and seduction are nature's tools for survival because we protect what we fall in love with. And like you, I've definitely been seduced by nature. Mother Nature has me under her spell, and I don't think there's any way out for me. So we definitely share the same philosophy. And my first question is, do you believe that you can move people on an emotional level enough to create a palpable shift in consciousness, meaning one that will lead to behavioral changes that are necessary to actually protect not just the planet, but humankind?
No, absolutely. I mean, just as you were seduced by going into the ocean, and I'm seduced every morning by looking at flowers, and even though I've been doing it, let's say, for 4 decades, every flower is different. Every lighting situation is different. I'm actually still learning how to do it. But if you have that sense of curiosity and wonder, then I think that's communicated in the imagery. I mean, first of all, nature's imagery is medicine. It's healing. But if you yourself have that, passion and excitement, I think it's critical that you feel that at the moment that you capture the image, because then it is communicated to the audience. It's kind of like subliminal. Maybe some people think it's a little bit hocus pocus, but like when Beethoven wrote down the Fifth Symphony, was he passionate as he was scribbling down those notes, or is it just those notes? I think it was the passion. And when an orchestra plays it, they need to play it with passion, correct?
For sure.
So when I film it, that's one element. When it gets, projected, you want it at the highest quality theater, the best sound, the best audio, so that the emotion can be communicated. And if the emotion is communicated, then you're hitting the heart. And if you hit the heart, then yes, you can shift consciousness, which then means you're impacting a change in behavior, which is the answer that we need to our environmental crisis.
I love hearing that. And then there's a part of me that is like, oh, are we just being naive? Like, can beauty and love truly win out over fear and hatred and dark forces and greed and politics and all these things.
I look, you're either an optimist or a pessimist, right? You get caught in a riptide. Are you going to say to yourself, I'm fucked? Or are you going to say, I'm going to go for the shore? I mean, quitting is never an option.
I agree.
However, I do believe that beauty does appeal to the higher self. And I think in terms of news and entertainment even, it's really easy to do fear. You know, I could just pull a gun right now and aim it at you and go bang. And, you know, that's going to create a fear response. But there's no talent in doing that. For me to have you laugh and cry and feel, that takes a lot more artistry. And beauty is I think the blueprint that nature created for life to go forward. You know, it's got a lot to do with reproduction, obviously, you know, and life is a force of energy, so it wants to be perpetual. And if we sort of can like let go and understand it from that point of view and not look at beauty as what Madison Avenue uses beauty for to sell products. I mean, a pretty girl next to the car, and we know that drill. You know, there's a certain color red that appeals to certain cultures to sell product. But that's a wavelength of energy is what that is. And nature over, you know, billions of years of R&D kind of figured out like what it takes to manipulate your behavior. And we can use that in a positive way, or we can use it in a negative way. I think the choice is ours. And hopefully, if we're involved as filmmakers, then we have, I think, a moral responsibility to use it in the most positive way possible.
So the optimist in you is never going to let go of this notion that love will win out over fear in the end.
It has to. My parents were Holocaust survivors, you know, and so I've got a lot of, I think, survivor DNA in me.
For sure.
And I want to be part of life force, you know. I mean, suicide is the opposite of that, correct?
Yeah.
And I want to be on the extreme opposite of that.
And okay, good. Well, we'll come back around to that. We'll stick with that optimistic tone for sure.
Okay.
But let's continue with beauty. Your moving art. Let's start with that project. Congrats on your, now is it third season on Netflix?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So tell us about that and what was the inspiration for creating it?
Well, it's really odd. It turned out that when Netflix, you know, announced they were able to stream 4K, which was about 6 or 7 years ago, roughly, they didn't have any material to demo at the Consumer Electronics Show. And I had met the CTO at TED, and he remembered that I had this library. And so, you know, they wanted like, you know, this, you know, long form demo they could play. And I said, sure, I'll do it. But, you know, I want to do it my way. You know, no celebrity host. It was going to be just nature and music. And they were fine with that. Well, it turned out that it was like a big hit at the show. And then they said, wow, we'd like to stick it on the platform. And then lo and behold, because they've got the algorithms, they find out, guess what? People are watching it every day. They're watching the same episode every day, which means they've turned it into a practice. And I've gotten comments in the range from, you know, parents with children with autism, you know, to teenagers that were suicidal, to, you know, people with stress, anxiety, patients, post-op, pre-op, people with severe, you know, diagnosis, people at the end of life, have all given me these incredible comments how it saved them.
Wow.
And so it only kind of reaffirms, and I think we both feel the same way, that, you know, nature's imagery is medicine. I mean, we used to live in nature. And so being disconnected from it in our urban, you know, life and being more of in a brain thinking mode and not more in that physical mode.
Right.
It's just reconnecting with maybe who we were really intended to be and to function. So even if you're skeptical and say, well, it's not medicine, no, but maybe it's good. It's going back to normal is what it is in a way. And that's what the brain evolved over, you know, hundreds of millions of years, as opposed to the last couple hundred years where we've become, urban people.
Yeah, it's amazing if you think about the evolution over millions of years, and then just through technology in the last 100 years, how we've become so disconnected.
Yes.
Interesting. So moving art is all time lapse. As we said at the beginning, you've spent 40-ish years or more filming in time lapse. I got to hear about your fascination with time lapse. How does slowing down or speeding up the imagery impact the emotional response that we receive? And what is it like for you when you're filming it? Like, does it put you in a different state? Do you feel like you're almost getting into, like, you become the flower, or what is it like for you?
Well, first of all, it's really great to bend time and scale, and to be able to put yourself in the point of view of a flower or a hummingbird or a redwood tree. If you do that, it broadens your perception, and opens your horizons, and it opens your heart, most importantly. And this idea of of the human centric point of view is very arrogant in so many different ways, right? But especially in our relationship to time. So people walk by flowers, and they're beautiful, they're pretty, but you're not aware that they're dancing to the light, So if I speed that up, and you can actually see that they're dancing to the light, they move to the light, they respond. Well, they're in the equal universe to our universe. And the same thing would be true if a redwood tree was maybe looking at us. We're just zipping around like time-lapse ants, And then the mosquito on our arm might be looking up at us, and that hand comes in ultra slow motion, because you never can hit that guy on the way out, right? Because he's living at a totally different metabolic rate. So, scientifically, you can say, okay, everyone's got their own metabolic rate. As filmmakers, we go, hey, everyone's got their own frame rate. We're kind of stuck at 24 frames per second. That's the standard that filmmakers use in general to film reality. It plays back at 24 frames. It's got this 1-to-1 ratio. Well, that just pops the balloon on this conversation of what is time, just because we see it at this particular cadence, it is only a really, really, really narrow point of view.
I've always wondered with time, like right now as we're talking, it's 2:48 on a Tuesday afternoon. Like, what does that even mean? Like, it's a totally human made up concept, right?
Right. This is, this wristwatch, but look, all great, religious practices, all great spiritual practices, they all want to do the same thing. Meditation. It's like, be in the moment, right?
Sure.
And so that means no past, no future, but being in the moment. And also when you're in the moment, you're like the scientist, being able to observe with, ultimate, clarity. If you're the artist, you're able to be inspired. But being in the moment, there is no past or future. And that's when, quote unquote, time, they say comes, stands still. I think more importantly, it's when we connect with the divine. Whatever that is, it's like being, at one with the universe. And that could be just by looking at the stars, or looking at a tree, or looking at a flower. If you can really be present at that moment, connecting with this other life form, then it is bliss.
Two things come to mind when you say that. One, you've been doing this for decades now, and you have the look of a child in your face when you talk about the dancing of the flowers with the light. It's like something you discovered today.
But that's because every time I shoot like a time-lapse shot, like the flowers, I'm surprised with the result when I look at the dailies. I don't know what it's going to look like, and it's always a challenge. Every sunset is different, right?
Yeah, like I was saying, every day on the water. It's the same. I'm in the exact same spot, but it's always different. It's never the same.
It's always different, and it always turns you on, right? And so that's the joy. So you don't get tired of it. You just I guess for both of us, what you do in the water, maybe what I'm doing every morning, checking out the flower. Did it fall out of frame? Is it in focus? Whatever. Right. I realize now that it's become a practice, like the way other people have a practice where they, they meditate or they chant, whatever they do in the morning. I'm checking out the flower. It gets me out of bed, number one. I don't want to be shooting, a blank frame where the flower died, and it's something to look forward to.
But you still love it. You're not like, oh God, I got to wake up and look at the flowers again. Like I've never done that before.
If I didn't have a flower, maybe I wouldn't get out of bed.
The other thing I want to say was around present moment awareness. I've noticed for me, if you were to ask me like one of the moments that I'm most present, one of them for sure is when I'm on my board with a pod of dolphins. I've done it I probably had almost 2,000 encounters with dolphins. So I've done it many, many times, but in that moment with them, I'm not thinking about what happened earlier. I'm not thinking about what I got to do later. I'm fully in that moment and trying to capture it. Do I photograph? Do I videotape? Like I'm trying to capture that moment, but I'm not thinking. So what is it for you? When do you find yourself most present?
Well, definitely capturing these magic moments. I mean, not with time lapse, more like with, slow-mo and other events of phenomena. It's like, well, you're in the zone, man. You always want to be like in the right spot, just like catching a wave. You got to be in the right spots. You got to figure that out. So even when I don't have a camera, I'm figuring that out. I'm always looking around and being aware, where's the light coming from? Wow, that's really beautiful. Why is it beautiful? Oh, is it backlit? Is it side lit? So that I can remember that as by archive as a tool. And so it's a bit of like a chess game, as you know. You got to be in the right spot. The lighting's got to be great. The phenomenon's got to be great. And people go, oh man, you're so lucky. You got this great shot. Like the dolphin just jumped in front of you. No, dude. Yes, I was lucky. However, I was prepared to be, lucky. Yeah. You
got to put in your time. Yeah.
But the preparation is a bit of like a traditional kind of mantra practice, like you have to, you got to like, light the candle or burn the incense or do the chant. I mean, we have to do the same thing. We got to load the camera. You got to check the exposure. You got to make, clean everything and, no water drops and all these little things you got to do. They're not a hassle. They're not joy, but it's a procedure that in a sense you could say it's like a religious practice.
With a purpose, like there's some religious or spiritual practices that are done just for the practice of it. Move 12 stones from this point in the garden to the other side. So you're having a practice that has this beautiful result, and it's amazing. So speaking of, I think this will continue the conversation further. Let's actually, I want to talk about gratitude revealed, but anything else you want to discuss moving art related?
Well, I'm really thrilled that, besides the series where we've actually begun to move it into healthcare at the Jacobs Medical Center at UCSD. It's in every single room, which is pretty cool. We give patients the power of choice. When choice has been taken away, we ask them on this like iPad, where in the world you want to go to be healed, So if you can't, travel to these exotic locations, at least we can bring that inside. Plus, when you're shooting things like time-lapse, slow-mo, wildlife, I hate to say it, but it's almost better than reality because, what are the odds of you capturing a shot of a whale underwater? How many times would you have to dive to get that shot?
Many.
Well, bingo, we can just have it pop up instantly. How many times can I get the flower to open up perfectly? Very high failure rate in doing all of that. So I'm kind of giving you a hyper sense of reality. And I believe that the brain looks at that light energy and it doesn't say, oh, it's digital. It's not real. Just like when you hear music, the brain isn't going, oh, that's digital. It's not a live performance. If the music is touching your heart, if it's allowing you to relax, to unwind, then it's a good thing.
So this is your visual healing project that you're talking about.
I'm sorry. I kind of went off the deep end there terms of the esoteric aspect of it, but bringing it into... I didn't
expect this to go in any linear straight line, by the way.
No, but like definitely bringing it into healthcare. And then I got to pinch myself. I'm actually cutting a sequence right now that's going to be used in a clinical trial at St. John's in Santa Monica, we're combining like a 40-minute movie that I'm making of nature's patterns with psilocybin to treat alcohol addiction. So I'm really excited about that, and lots of good stuff going on in this space.
Amazing. So we'll talk mushrooms in a moment.
Okay.
I want to hear more about visual healing. So the idea here is that nature, in this case, just viewing it, connects us with the deepest part of our soul and can actually heal us both emotionally and physically. I've always been in the camp that most physical ailments that we have are a physical manifestation of what's going on emotionally. So go a little deeper if you can on your take on how just visually, how is that affecting our emotions, which could create actual physical healing in patients.
Right. So Rich, I agree with you. I mean, they're discovering now that stress, anxiety, dis-ease creates disease. I think that's pretty self-evident. The body can heal itself, but it can't heal itself if you're going to always be, in this fight or flight mode, right? Okay, so what we have to get out of that mode, the fear, the anxiety, and nature's imagery, I think, is certainly one way to do that, because for me, it's a homecoming. I can't explain why looking at a slow motion ocean wave crashing with drops falling in all these beautiful directions, like why that makes me relax, but it does. And if it does, then the brain waves are getting into more of that kind of, is it theta mode, I believe? And therefore I'm secreting less cortisol throughout my body. And anytime you're relaxing, just like when you sleep, that's when the body can heal itself. It can't heal itself if you're, hauling ass away from a cheetah, So but our lives are, unfortunately, are even worse than that. It's like, negative phone call. You can burn it off by running. Now you got this anxiety because all of a sudden you got some anxiety news that is giving you some grief, and most people, I think, in the course of their day, spend more time in the arena of anxiety and stress than they do in the arena of joy and happiness.
And like we were saying, the joy and the happiness and the gratitude, which we'll come to next, that's all in the present moment. If I'm in fear, anxiety, I'm most likely thinking about what already happened or worried about what might happen. So
exactly.
And there seems to be, I'm getting the theme here that your work is really about catching people's attention.
Yeah.
So they're in the moment. That's,
And instead of just being like a lot of meditation teachers, be in the moment and be here now. We actually have the ability to, make you present by showing you something that makes your jaw drop, and everybody goes, "Oh my God," And when they say, "Oh my God," it means, I made you present. My means it touched my soul, and God is that universal energy we all want to be connected to. So, I love it when people say, "Oh my God."
Do you like when they say OMG though?
I like that too. G stands for gratitude as well.
Speaking of gratitude, perfect segue. So another project I want to discuss is Gratitude Revealed, which looks at I think it's a beautiful blend of the science and the mystery of how gratitude can reconnect us to ourselves, to the planet. I've had my own gratitude practice for years. One of the things I'll do, I'll go out on my board, and as I'm paddling, I will either sometimes out loud or just in my head, I will just list out, it could be 10, it could be 100 things that I'm grateful for. And it's typically people that I love, someone I just had a conversation with, and just the more that I do that, it feels good. So tell us about Gratitude Revealed. How did that project originate, and why is gratitude so important to you specifically?
Well, I heard this great recording by Brother David Stendhal-Rost. He's a Jesuit priest. He's probably almost like 90 years old now. And gratefulness.org is like an organization that he has. And he had this beautiful kind of poetic, poem that it talked about gratitude. And I just thought, I like to put some imagery against it, imagery that I had in my library. And I kind of did it as a test because at the time I had two young daughters, in their early 20s. And you know what they're like. They're always very like, Dad, you're so cheesy. Like always giving them advice like, oh God, like rolling your eyes. So I was kind of curious to see if I could put something together that was, quote unquote transformational,
Right.
and without them, rejecting it. And that was sort of the reason why I did it initially. And what I found out is that, they liked it, but young people like it, old people like it. It went viral. I ended up getting interviewed by Oprah on Super Soul Sunday.
Yeah.
I got a grant from the Templeton Foundation. We did 16 little short films, all with science backed up by UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center. And so it just turned into a whole kind of franchise, I guess. And now I'm working on a feature-length version of what I've been working on.
What'd your daughter say when Oprah called? Did they apologize?
Nothing. Nah, nothing. You know how they are. It's like, nothing moves their needle unless it's like in their world.
It's Oprah, for God's sake. If that doesn't move their needle, what will? How does gratitude show up in your own life? Like, we'll go deeper into on a broad scale, but I'm curious how it's important to you.
Well, again, I can't help but think about my folks, who went through, a terrible ordeal, but still had like a lot of hope and love in their life. And so, I'm just, and what I learned from living, under their roof was that they were grateful for all the little things in life, food on the table, a roof over your head, the miracle of being able to have children. That was heaven on earth, to them. And I think that it's kind of interesting, but that attitude really, I think, became the foundation of my environmental outlook. Because when it comes to the environment, I'm grateful for all the little things. The bee pollinating that flower that gives us the fruit and vegetables and nuts and seeds we need to eat. The mushrooms and the soil, creating soil. It's not like being enamored with the elephants and the lions and the whales at the top of the food chain. You learn to be grateful for all of the tiny things, the microbes. Right?
You and me would be out on the ocean with a 100-foot blue whale, and I'd be like, look at that whale, and you'd be jumping in the water looking at the little tiny krill.
Yeah.
The whale eats, right?
But without the krill, no whale,
That's
right? And no whale, there'd still be krill.
Yeah. More of it. They eat a lot of it.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's the foundation. So being grateful for the most important things in life, correct? I mean, what's foundational, like the fact that you're healthy, the fact that, you've got 10 fingers and they all move, right? The fact that you've got your eyes and your ears and all that good stuff. I mean, that's the foundation rather than saying, oh, I'm really grateful that I'm a great surfer. I'm grateful I got this great job. I'm grateful I get to travel. I mean, you got to like either go down to the basics, right? What enables you to do all of that? Because you can always be grateful for that. Like if you have like a bad day, the beach is flat, or a job doesn't come through, or a girl leaves you, whatever it might be. At least you've got these guys that move,
That's right.
and at least you have your health, and at least you've got a blue sky. There's just a lot of things, and then when you do that, what's really happening, I believe, in the brain is you're blocking out the ability for negative thoughts to come into your head. What's great about gratitude is like it's an input. I'm giving thanks for something that's been given to me, and therefore I don't have the energy to put out this negative thought, And the more I load up on the good stuff, maybe my hard drive will just max out, and there won't even be room for the bad stuff.
So your parents taught you just appreciate the things most of us probably take for granted.
Yeah.
What's the stat that if you have a roof over your head, food on your table, you've got it better than 75% of the world? So that's pretty amazing. It reminds me of one of the the first books that really impacted me many years ago was Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning, which he was a Holocaust survivor and somehow in that impossible moment found the little things to be grateful for.
Right.
I think so many people are, oh, go ahead and say it again.
I'm just saying it's how he was able to survive, because if you got caught up in the misery and you really dove into the suffering, it would be hard to survive.
It would be very hard, which I'm sure most people did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so many people are focused on their goals and they have this, once I achieve this, I'll be happy mindset. When I make $1 million, when I find love, when I lose 20 pounds, and then there's always this gap between their current reality and their desired reality. So yeah, gratitude grounds us, like we keep saying, brings us into the present moment and reminds us what's important, right?
Yeah.
That's why the little flower never gets boring to you.
Right. And what's great is it's a really, I think, a key practice to becoming really in touch with nature, and also being an environmentalist, being an advocate for the bees, being an advocate for soil, being an advocate for the little things in life, the things you take for granted. It's easy to say, hey, we got to, and it's valid, believe me, to protect the whales and the elephants, but that's kind of obvious, It takes the little more, compassion to also be, caring about the little guys.
What do you think's happened? Like we're saying, over the last 100 years or so with technology, it seems like we've gotten more disconnected, extremely disconnected from nature. And it's like nature, there is no nature and no nature. It's all nature.
Yeah.
It's interesting talking to you about this actually with technology. If not for technology, you wouldn't be doing the work that you're doing. You couldn't be filming time-lapse without that technology. Right. So how do you negotiate that in your mind? How is, like, I've actually always, and part of me has been afraid of technology. And to this day, the fact that I know how to go online and record this podcast, I'm very impressed with myself, because I'm not good at technology. I'm good at delegating to people on my team that are good at that, because I think at some level, intuitively, it's a fear, like, if I get too sucked into technology, that I'm going to be disconnected from nature. So how do you navigate that in your own mind?
I guess you have to have a balance. I mean, the technology of, let's say, cameras and what we're doing right now, I think, is a tool. Mm-hmm. And we've always been able to develop tools, whether it's like spears and hammers and things like that as well. But unfortunately, we've also have technology today that can really engage the brain or the mind in a way that it becomes suffocating or all-encompassing and controlling. And that is scary. That's like 1984, George Orwell. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there was an evil intent for that to occur, but these mega companies, now the largest companies in the world, like Facebook and Google, et cetera, well, they've spent billions of dollars trying to figure out how to keep you engaged, with the beep and the chime and the likes and all the devices that they've hired the most brilliant, PhD, graduates from Stanford and Yale. I mean, so look at what you're up against. You're up against billions of dollars. You're up against the smartest software engineers and hardware engineers. And initially it was all about, democratization. Everyone's got access to information. And I don't think anyone really foresaw it, but because it's profit-driven, it's a capitalistic, model, then Facebook and all these other things have created scenarios where, unfortunately, guys like, Donald Trump could, use it for his own self-interest.
100%. Where do you think it's going? Like, I look at these technologies, and like you're saying, if you watch The Social Dilemma, they interview the people that created, the guy that created the like button. He was like, he had no idea what he was creating, right? He didn't know what it would become. And it concerns me because these are newer technologies that have, especially like your daughter's age, younger people they're like born, they're wired in. I mean, I go down to the beach and everyone's staring at their phones. It's just like, if it's already like this, where is it going to be? How do maybe I don't want to. Let's keep this optimistic. Like, how do we move your work forward, and people that do similar work, my work in some way, to continuously remind people, like, hey, turn the damn thing off and look in the dirt, look in the ocean, look around you.
Well, look. So to be realistic, we're not going to get people to put their phones away. One thing I do feel good about is if I can put my imagery on that phone and show them something they've never seen before, like time-lapse flower. I mean, there are so many, the people who live in like Southeast LA in these marginalized communities have never been to the ocean.
That's right.
So it's only like maybe 10 miles away. And so if you can turn them on like that, then maybe, they will do that. Or if you can see a flower open, you'll take a walk through the woods. So I think we can try to use technology in a positive way. I mean, certainly the work I've done and guys like, Greg McGillivray, in Laguna with, the IMAX experience, people want to have an immersive experience. And there's a lot of technology that goes into that. But the good news about that is that those films about dolphins and whales and have certainly softened people's hearts to where they will protect them, because the reality is most of us will never go to Africa or Antarctica or Galapagos, So if you can get that connection with those species in order to protect them, again, because if you fall in love with them, well, I think that's important because especially now with COVID, first of all, there's no travel. Second of all, these sacred places are disappearing, as we both know, because of environmental degradation.
Correct.
So, and if you did bring millions of people to Galapagos, well, you would destroy Galapagos. So why not give them a digital experience that can show them the truth, the beauty, all the moral lessons we need to learn, symbiosis, relationships, then why not, leverage that to our benefit, and look at the positive side. I mean, that's all I can do. I can't worry about the crap that's going through these channels. I mean, hey, 99% of what's on cable TV is still crap.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's negative energy. But it's slow. It's taking time. And I think audiences are growing. Look how long it took for people to become conscious about what they eat. I remember when I was at UCLA, there was like one health food store, and all they had in it was vitamins. There was no produce. And now you got Amazon buys Whole Foods. So there's a giant market for, healthy eating. And healthy eating means healthy bodies. We learned eventually that fast food's not good for you. We learned that smoking cigarettes is not good for you. Eventually, we're going to learn that looking at imagery of people being shot and murdered and tortured, hundreds of times in in a year, I would say, literally in a year, if you watch a lot of junk television, is going to have a negative effect on your health.
So true. Yeah, the desensitization. Yeah, and evolution's a slow process, right? It takes time. But when we step back and look at it, we are moving forward, and you're seeing the positive impact of your work. We could see it in movies like Blackfish and the changes that have occurred there. So it is happening. I love the optimism, Louie, that just oozes from you. It's
thank you.
I've always considered myself an optimist, but also a realist, and my brain can sometimes go down that negative rabbit hole. So,
well, okay. If again, the same analogy, you're in the rowboat off the shore, right? There's an optimist and there's a pessimist in the boat. Who are you going to hang with? You're taking on water. It looks like you're sinking. You're about 100 yards away from shore, right? I'm not a great swimmer. You could probably do that in a heartbeat. But for me, that might be a challenge. And I want to be with that guy that goes, no, Louie, we're going to make it, okay? Yep. Let's go for it. I got it, Or the other guy's going to go, we're fucked. Right? And then we both agree we're taking on water, and we both agree there's 100 yards from shore, same right? Situation. So we agree on the reality, right? It's just how we approach it. I once saw this quote that an optimist is someone with their sleeves rolled up. I love that.
That's good. I've never heard that quote. I like that one. Very good. All right. Can we talk some mushrooms?
You bet.
There's so many jokes going through my head that I want to share, but I'm like, oh, he's heard all of them. The first one, of course, being you made a movie on mushrooms. What was it like making a movie while you were hallucinating, Louie?
I wasn't on mushrooms. It was about mushrooms.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. So I watched Fantastic Fungi. Fungi. I'm like addicted to it, and all my friends are. I watched it right before you and I went live here, and I love it. The more I watch it, the more I realize I am completely clueless in many ways to the whole concept, to be 100% honest with you. It's not only a beautiful visual trip about how there's an organism that feeds us and heals us and holds the secret to the universe and can help save the planet, and it's like right below our feet. So it's an amazing movie. Can you take us into the world, if you will, of this mysterious mycelium and mushrooms?
Well, for me, it was sort of a natural evolution. Again, we talked about the fact that, like I shot time-lapse flowers because graduating out of UCLA, I couldn't afford to shoot 35 millimeter movie film. So I could spend 2 or 3 months shooting a 4-minute roll of film, which I could afford, right? But that, led me to, giant milestones here. But then I heard about colony collapse disorder, the fact that the bees are disappearing. And you can't tell the story about the bees without telling the story about flowers. Now they co-evolved over 50 million years. That's a love story that feeds the earth, gives us all the healthy, food we need to eat. And then you go, okay, well, that's critical, man. Pollination is like, wow, the intersection between the animal world and the plant world. It's the foundation of life. I kind of thought I'd hit the foundation there, or the ground floor. Yeah. And then you go, no, man, there's something even bigger than that. Because what do plants need? They need soil. Where does soil come from? What makes soil? People think it's just, a lot of people just assume soil's on the ground. It's not, But fungi can, break down organic matter, can even break down rock and create soil, break down the nutrients, the basic molecules for plants to absorb through their root system as nutrients. And so without that, there really is no life. So it's kind of funny. A lot of people think of decomposition as the end of life, right? Could be the beginning of life. Because unless you have the basic parts to build something, you don't have anything, right? It's a circle. So, it's not the end or the beginning. It's all one continuous thing. So I guess I just love unveiling the mystery, asking the big questions. Like, my next one, look, you surf all the time, right? Paddleboard.
I'm not, for the record, you mentioned if I see a flat ocean, that's a bad thing. For me, as a paddleboarder, that's actually a good thing.
Okay, all right, good. So you paddleboard and you really appreciate, the ocean and water, okay?
Yes.
What is water?
Hydrogen and oxygen? Like a science lesson.
What does that mean? That's like 2 little circles on a piece of paper. We go H2o. Where did water come from?
Oh, I'm getting quizzed here, Louie. Are you being rhetorical?
No, I'm serious, because all I'm saying is you got to ask these basic questions that we take for granted. Yeah. So I just recently researched it. Water, apparently, according to science, came from giant asteroids that crashed into the earth while it was cooling.
Water and giant asteroids that crashed into the earth? Please tell me more.
With ice on them, filled with ice. Yeah. And then they asked the question, well, what is H2o? Well, H2O, it takes like incredible amounts of energy to get, I guess, these 2 H2O, get 2 hydrogens to bond with an oxygen. Apparently, the energy it takes is like inside of the sun. So at the dawn of the universe, at the beginning of time, that's when this energy forced these atoms to combine to make water. You can't make water. Think about that. And you can't destroy water.
You can change the form of it, but you can't.
Exactly.
So hold on. You had me at asteroids. You're telling me that this planet that you and I are flying around on right now was just a dry globe, and then a
glowing hot lava.
Glowing hot lava, and then a massive ice cube flew.
Maybe millions of ice cubes, millions of them over periods of hundreds and millions and millions and millions of years. Because apparently they've checked the molecular structure of ice that has landed, on an asteroid, and apparently it matches the type of water we have on our planet. Anyways, the point is, I didn't mean to put you on the spot by asking you a question.
I like being put on the spot.
Very personal. But
okay.
like, what is water? But I'm just saying, I just love, like it's like a little like 5-year-old goes, what is air?
Yeah. Yeah, the things we see and take it's the things we're taking for granted. You're finding the joy in the little things that most people aren't even thinking about.
And the same thing is like, what is fungi? So did you know that it was in 1969 that they finally figured out that fungi, doesn't have photosynthesis, that its outer shell is chitin, which is the same thing as what, shellfish has, for example. Mm-hmm. So it's more akin to an animal than to a plant. And that's when they created the separate kingdom called, the Fungi Kingdom. So can you imagine that prior to 1969, they had grouped fungi with plants? When actually fungi, there's 6 times or 10 or 20 times more species of fungi than plants, and they haven't even discovered them all.
You say that in the movie, right? That they're kind of somewhere in between a plant and an animal. Am I right? Right.
Yeah. Well, they're like us in so many ways because they have an external stomach. So they put out enzymes to digest their food, and then they absorb it. They break things down. Plants, use the sun's energy and creates photosynthesis in order to do that. Well, we can't do that. Mushrooms can't do that. We both live on other matter. We live on these chemical bonds that plants created that we digest. And so, and also their DNA is more similar to our DNA than they are to plants, which is why, penicillin and all these, fungal extracts are giant immunity boosters, because the viruses that they fight, like in this pandemic, for example, are the same enemies that we deal with as well.
So you put this movie out, it came out in 2019, correct? Before the pandemic.
Fall of 2019, yeah.
And you kind of foresaw what was coming in that movie, did you not? You talked about a pandemic. That kind of blew me away. No?
No, I know. So we talked about pandemics, but it wasn't like a conscious decision to put that in there knowing that COVID would come. But look, I think that, we're exploring the mycological world and worlds of, of microbes. I mean, there's they say, 10 miles of mycelium, which is like the root structure of a mushroom. For people that are listening, the mushroom is the fruit, and like the apple to a tree. The tree is the mycelium, the mushroom is the apple. And this giant network is under the ground. So it's enormously, it's like maybe only one cell thick. There's 10 miles in a cubic inch of soil, okay? So there, we are, I believe humans are in the 80th percentile of living creatures on the planet. We are walking giants. There are trillions of cells in our bodies. We're like a walking Milky Way, okay? When you compare our entity to other entities. So now all of a sudden we got this, there's mega universes that are these microbes, and now we're learning. And I think there's a lot of fear with COVID because it seems like an alien, because we know nothing about this world, It's as if we knew nothing about birds, and all of a sudden hummingbirds were coming out to attack us, we'd flip out, But okay, it's a crazy hummingbird or something. But at least we have a concept of this, animal kingdom. And with the microbes, all they show is that crazy red ball with the spikes on.
Exactly.
So I can see how it can generate a lot of fear. It's invisible. What is it? I never thought about microbes. I have no idea that there are more microbes on my body than there are people on the planet. Some are good, some aren't. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, for anyone that hasn't seen this movie yet, it's so fascinating. Like I said, it's beautiful visually. It's captivating, and like I said, I've watched it 3 times, and I'm like, I need to continue. There's so much content and knowledge in there that it's hard to consume it all while watching this beauty at the same time. It's almost overwhelming. So in the movie, you make the claim that the mycelium can heal us, and it holds these secrets, and it can save the planet. That's a pretty big task. So tell me more about that, please. How does it heal?
Sure. Well, it's a beautiful thing. So, whoops. Are you there? Did I lose you?
Oh, you're good.
Oh, there we go. Okay, great. I just lost my screen connection for a second. Hold on.
No problem.
There you go.
You're
Okay.
back.
Okay, so it can heal our bodies. Lion's mane they found is really helpful for your nervous system and with people with memory loss. Turkey tail, as we saw in the movie, there are studies that prove that it can be a very powerful immune defense system for people with cancer, especially women with breast cancer. And then, of course, the biggest aha moment that I got was the fact that, it can be the greatest natural solution for climate change. And the reason why is in partnership with, plants and trees. Plants and trees, through photosynthesis, they take in CO2, right? And then they release oxygen. Well, the carbon goes into the leaf, into the twig, to the branch, to the trunk, into the root system, and then is traded with this mycelium network for nutrients that it needs, phosphorus, nitrogen, whatever. It's beautiful. There's like a shared economy under the ground, not based on greed, where life flourishes, for everyone to flourish. So when you look at a forest, it's not a bunch of trees. It's a community. And that's how it works. That's how nature works. That's why it's a beautiful model. So getting back to climate change, that carbon then is sequestered in the mycelium network for thousands of years. Carbon is a building block of life. There's nothing wrong with carbon. Right. It's not toxic. It's just the fact that we've burned it and put it in the atmosphere, billions of tons. And so if we stopped putting fossil fuel, pollution into the atmosphere, scientists believe that we could actually clean the atmosphere in 50 years just by letting nature do its thing. I mean, I'm sure as you've traveled, you've seen like thousands of acres of grasses or trees in, remote areas of the world, right?
Sure.
And they're just sucking in CO2. That's what they do, I mean, are we going to build a giant vacuum cleaner and come up with some kind of crazy technology that can outperform every tree on the planet? Every plant, every blade of grass. I mean, look at that. Imagine the horsepower of that, And what we need to do is just allow it to fall back into balance, because we've burned so much fossil fuel that we've overtaken the ability for the planet to heal itself. So that's the reason why mycelium and fungi is critical for climate change, because they are able to, in partnership, create that. And then, of course, the other element, which is something I always knew, is the fact that, that psilocybin and, sacred medicines like that can be a very powerful healing experience for your soul.
Absolutely.
To be able to become present, to be able to kind of see life from the point of view of a plant or a fungi can open your heart and create a spiritual experience that I think we desperately need right now.
I 100% agree. And I love, if we really step back and look at this conversation, we talk about personal health, and now we're talking about the health of the planet. And the answer was the same thing. It's balance. It's like you said, the body can heal itself of anything if it's in balance. The planet, even though we're doing all these things to potentially destroy it, if we stop doing that, it'll heal itself. One of the great parallels I always draw is how where I'm sitting in Laguna Beach, the coastline, there's a 6-mile stretch of coastline right here. that is not only a marine protected area, but it's a no-take zone. It's against a lot of fish. Ever since January 1st, 2012, it's been against a lot of fish. Before the no-take zone went into place, I would paddle out every day, and if you look down in the water, you would not see a lot of fish at all. It was pretty well fished out. And I kid you not, 6 months into the no-take zone going into place, 6 months, I paddle out, and I look down, and I see fish everywhere. Little tiny fish, bigger fish, dolphins, whales. And I'm like, there's no way just 6 months that the ocean could rejuvenate that quick. And I don't think you could get a scientist. I'm not a scientist. I'm just the guy that is out there every single day. I don't think you could get a scientist, even now, barely to say that that's what's caused the difference. But in my mind, how could it not? Like we're saying, just leave the planet alone, people, and let it regenerate. So,
yeah, I mean, resilience. And it's interesting that nature has that resilient energy because life is a force of energy. I mean, I'm beginning to realize that more and more. You could say, do you have a spiritual belief? Yeah, it's called life.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's unstoppable. Every species will do anything it takes for life to go forward, right? You see, I mean, in the animal kingdom, in order to, they'll give up eating, sleeping in order to mate.
That's right.
They'll die. Look at the salmon that go upstream, all to to spawn and lay their eggs. They die from that effort of swimming, miles and miles and miles just so that their DNA can go forward. It is pretty powerful. So I love that. And just one other connection, because what's the connection to gratitude in what you just said? I'll tell you. It's like there were studies that show that people who practice gratitude are more resilient. You bounce back. Like when things happen in your life, like, hey, somebody rear-ended me, on the way to work. For some people, that could be a weak bummer.
Right.
But for people who practice gratitude, it's like, hey, I didn't get hurt. I'm cool. No big deal.
Big deal.
The next day they're back to their life. You know what I mean? And it depends on how you take these hits. We're all going to get hit. We're all going to get a bump in the road. Nature does too.
Yeah.
The monarchs are flying, from Mexico to Canada. And guess what? They ran into a fucking hurricane. Right? Or a tornado or a big storm, and they get slammed, and they're down to 10% of their population. That 10% will bounce back.
It's like two guys in the rowboat. They're not like, oh shit, we got hit we got hit by a hurricane. Let's sit here and dwell in our misery. Exactly. I've never seen a dolphin or a whale complain about anything. Now that you say it, right?
Things bounce back. And the other thing about this pandemic is that we talk about balance. Well, in nature, when herds get to be too big, pandemics occur. Every time a species overtakes the ability for the ecosystem to support it, pandemics happen. And maybe there's some kind of karmic thing going on here. Where we have been blind to what we're doing to the immune system of the planet
and the immune system of ourselves. That I made a statement months ago now. I sometimes leave these things alone, and when I tend to, sometimes things I'll say just get a reaction that I wasn't necessarily intending. But I made a statement it was a Facebook post many months ago, and it was a play off of a line that you'll know. And all I posted was, "It's your immune system, stupid." Playing off of the line, it's the economy, stupid. And the reaction was quite profound, where all I was, maybe I shouldn't, people didn't like the words, some people didn't like that I said stupid, even though I wasn't intentionally calling them stupid, was like, you got to strengthen your immune system here, everybody. Like, that was what I was trying to say. I guess my big question on that is, is there just too many of us? Can this planet sustain 7-8 billion of us? I look at it like it's either going to go one of two ways. Either us 8 billion, when that number is growing, we're going to learn to live in harmony and balance with the planet, or to your point, the planet's going to say, nah, and spit us off.
Well, I think if we're going to be wasteful, then we have a problem with overpopulation. Just this morning, I saw like a video about, your diet can really help with climate change, eating, plant-based foods. But
sure.
to summarize it all, it was something like if everybody went, 90%, if everybody went vegan, we would eliminate 90% of the pollution we're putting out into the atmosphere. 90%. And that's how big it is. The farts from the methane, from all the, industrial, practices of raising livestock, the fact that you've taken all that earth. I think it's almost like, 1/3 of North America is like got livestock, which means there's nothing green growing on it.
Right.
80% of what we grow, the soybeans and the corn, is being used for feed, right? We got this very inefficient cycle. If you want to look at anything you do in business, you want to get to the source. You want to get rid of the middleman. Well, the source is the sun, okay? That's where all energy, comes from. And we want that energy, right? Well, the most direct way is through, only plants can do photosynthesis, can turn the sun energy into chemical bonds, and you eat the plant. Or you eat an animal that's been eating the plant, where you get a fraction of the energy from all that, and then you're getting a fraction of the energy from the animal that you eat, and you've created this giant pollution train, it's just like, it's insane. And it's bad for you. It's unhealthy on top of it all,
Now you're reminding me of another Facebook post once when I said that the best thing you can do to save the planet is not eat animals. That didn't necessarily go over well either, because now we're talking kind of coming full circle when I said, can your work shift consciousness to the point that will shift behavior in a way that will be best for ourselves and the planet, right? And people don't necessarily want to hear that kind of stuff. So
too bad. We got to face it, and even with, I love fish. But like, I got to be, we got to be conscious of the fish that we're eating, Yes. We don't want to decimate all fish. The reality is there's enough land that we could sustain the entire population and no hunger if we all lived on a plant-based diet. And we'd all be healthier.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Anna Getty was one of the producers of Fantastic Fungi. Was she not also the producer of Kiss the Ground? Am I right?
Yes.
It's a wonderful movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Regenerative agriculture, to me, our focus here is the ocean and what we can do to help protect the ocean, and it's all related, though. In fact,
it's rich, but all I want to say is, look, don't feel bad that you made that statement. I think it's like it's the elephant in the room. We got to face reality here. I'm sensitive though. I don't. It's not about feeling bad as much as, I don't know. I'm a sensitive human, so when people.
Sure.
Well, but then, Rich, what we can tell people is, let's just eat less of it. If you cut back 50%, that's 50% of the pollution going into the atmosphere. You can eat meat once a week. Whatever it takes. We can all do a baby step, because I know everyone's very sensitive, about their diet, but we also have to be aware of the choices we make and the consequences.
I agree. In fact, I'll give a selfish plug. Through our podcast, Our Epic Ocean, we are launching a 7-day free challenge called the Epic Ocean Challenge. In each of the 7 days, Louie has a different theme, and they're all less. So one is less plastic, less meat, less waste, less water. So to your theme, it's, if we just tell people don't ever eat meat again, that might not go over well, but less.
No, but just eat less would be great.
Can we talk a little bit about Paul Stamets?
Sure.
Obviously, Paul is featured in your movie, highly, and his quest is to understand the language of nature, like we were talking about here, so that we can, in his words, both save nature and save ourselves. Tell me about your relationship with him. He's such a unique man, and based on your relationship with him, why did this? It feels like this movie had to be made. So how did that all go down?
Well, so about 13 years ago, I saw Paul speak at Pioneers Convention. It's a great kind of environmentally conscious conference. It kind of marries biology, biomimicry, social justice. And I was working on Wings of Life, which was that Disney nature film where I have Meryl Streep be the voice of the flowers seducing the pollinators. And again, the same idea. I realized, wow, this is so important, pollination. But then when I heard Paul speak about fungi and the fact that it creates soil, which is, regeneration, rebirth, it's the beginning of life, really. Well, then I bonded with him. We got off stage. I flipped open my laptop. I showed him my time-lapse mushrooms. We probably smoked a joint when it was illegal to smoke a joint. And we became bros. And I started, interviewing Paul. And, little by little, as an independent filmmaker, it's tough because you put your own money in, you do a little bit, you do a little more, you do it a little more, and raising money and filming off and on. But it's great that, I think it took as long as it took, in a sense, to make the movie, because the timing was perfect when we released it, I believe. Not only because it preceded the pandemic, but because, the decriminalization of psilocybin in Washington, D.C., and Denver, and Santa Cruz, in the state of Oregon, it was having a big movement. And I think it's great that this is finally occurring. Nobody thought that cannabis would happen this quickly. Nobody thought gay marriage would happen this quickly. So I love the fact that we're kind of catalyzing a movement, and it's real. It isn't just like, well, we think there's a bunch of guys that are hippies that might like this movie. We sold out every theater just by putting the word out through the mycelial network. We broke records.
Amazing.
And it was great because we appealed to people that are into permaculture, into science, into healing, into foraging, into cooking, into teaching, into gardening, right? We can bring all these people together, and guess what? That's a lot of people.
A lot.
If you put all those together, I say it's more than 50%, or almost 50%, whatever, of the people that are out there. So I think we need to kind of get out of our little. We got to build community. We got to connect. There's more of us, and I mean, the decriminalized movement in Denver got more votes than the mayor did. Okay, so it's political, and when you say political is really beautiful because political is a measure of community. I mean, if we don't wake up, as we discovered in the last 4 years with Donald Trump, we just can't be like doing our own thing and eating healthy and being environmentally conscious if we don't address the people that are running our government, and creating a tremendous amount of negative impact on the environment. Correct? So
100%. You're going in a good direction. I want to hear a little bit more about Paul, but
I'm sorry, I was talking about Paul.
Okay, because you're leading into what people are. The whole focus of our show here is solutions, and not only what you're doing to make a difference, but what our viewers can do to make a difference. I won't forget to ask that, but let's hear a little bit more about Paul, because he just seems like one of the more interesting human beings.
Okay, so I was filming Paul, and up in Cortez Island and all these great places, and I admire Paul because Paul is an entrepreneur. He started his business, which is very successful, called Host of Founts, just by being, wanting to make enough money to pay for the beakers and the microscopes and all the research he wants to do. And then typically what happens when you're a scientist is that you have to work for big pharma, or you have to work at a university. You have to work and get grants, and the grants are only given by big corporations. So I admire the fact that Paul has been independent, and that's so important so that he could study and do whatever he needed to do. In that process, he has lots of patents, and those patents are great because they're like a protection against companies like Monsanto, for example. He's got broad patents with mycoremediation, with mushrooms that can also work with to replace pesticides by being able to manage and control insects. He's working on patents now that can build your immune system, and potentially even with COVID. So we've only scratched the surface of the healing potential of all these fungi, And it's because of guys like Paul who have pioneered it, who was certainly, who had to struggle, to get to that spot, to be able to do that. In the beginning, I'm sure people thought just a crazy hippie.
For sure.
And now he's, there's, he's been acknowledged for incredible scientific breakthroughs.
Is he considered an enemy to Big Pharma and Monsanto, or are they coming to him knowing that he's got solutions?
He's definitely considered an enemy.
I would think so.
But not an enemy, but he's built up a defense so that they can't claim broad patents.
Got it.
In areas that they weren't thinking of, because they would just do it. Yeah. Even if they're not interested in permaculture. They may not be interested in making soil, but if they grab that patent, it won't block them from doing GMOs.
Yeah, he's probably bad for business for them, though, right?
Yeah, and I think his goal someday is he'll put most of that out, in the public domain.
Yeah, definitely. So, last thought on all things fungi. Like I said, I watched the movie 3 times, and each time I'm like, oh my god, I barely know. I was happy that I answered that water was 2 parts hydrogen and oxygen. I figured that out. I was like, with this mushroom thing, there's so much to know. It feels like there's so much more to learn, not just for me, but for everybody. Can we expect more?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I'm working on right now is we're going to do like a summit where we're going to take 25 or 30 experts in the field and create not just 25 or 30 videos you watch, but an entire event. I want to do a live virtual event where it'll be like a green room, there'll be a bar, a room with live music, a room we can talk to guest speakers, and then the main stage would be pre-recorded videos. I want to create a whole event. And it's just like I put you on the spot with what is water. I mean, people. What I loved about what I think works with the movie, I've heard a lot of people go, God, why would I go see a film about mushrooms? It's like if anything, they probably thought it was a cooking film about food. But then you walk in, and I love the idea that you can pull the rug on the audience, and you learn about everything. You learn about consciousness. You learn about spirituality. Now, if I had said, oh, Fantastic Fungi, the spiritual movie, that's a turnoff for a lot of people, especially young people don't want to be preached to. So I love the fact that it's kind of unassuming, oh, it's just Fantastic Fungi. I'm not sure what it's going to be about, but here you go.
Actually, I was the opposite. When I first heard of it, I'm like, oh, I thought it was going to be more about mushrooms as a hallucinogenic, which I was intrigued by. But then when you watch it, I actually really love that. That was only really a small piece of it when you really focused on the other 1,000 ways that there's so for us on the planet. Very cool. I have 2 topics I want to wind down with, and I totally appreciate your time and love and energy today. Anything else? Any final thoughts on fungi that you want to share?
Well, I think that if people are interested in seeing it, like you saw it 3 times, I really appreciate that. But it's on, it's on Apple TV, it's on Amazon, and also you can get it direct on our own website, fantasticfungi.com. And another cool thing we're doing is we're actually doing a crowdsourced cookbook. So if people are interested, you go to the website, click on the tab that says cookbook, and we're going to publish a cookbook of all these great mushroom recipes from all across the country where people are foraging for their unique species of mushrooms.
I love it. You're gonna make me hungry, and we'll share all these links with everybody for sure. So
great.
I want to end with, like I was saying earlier, solutions that anybody watching can do, changes they can make in their own life or whatnot. But first, I want to talk about filmmaking. Obviously, you've inspired so many aspiring filmmakers. I kind of touched on this before, but how has technology changed your industry? Like you said, what you kind of did things out of necessity way back when, but now anybody, with an iPhone, you can make a movie. How has technology changed things?
Well, I think that's great for young people, that the barrier to entry, which used to be a lot of money to shoot anything in, let's say, 35 and even in 16 millimeter, it was It was you needed a big, significant budget. Well, I think the good news is, you can go out and start to film things. Now, what's great about that, and everyone, if there's, young people looking for advice, the most important thing I can really recommend, it's not about the technology. You got to develop your own voice. You got to develop your own point of view. You don't want to copy what some other director does or whatever. But what are you passionate about? Find your own voice. And now there's no reason why you can't put together a short film, with your iPhone or whatever it takes and experiment. And it's not going to cost you a lot of money to do it.
100%. Do you do any mentorship? I'm not asking personally, but just in general.
Well, yeah, we hire, we bring people on when we're on production, and got a lot of young PAs, and I feel like I'm always listening to them for great ideas.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. All right, so last question. To people watching, what can they do in their everyday lives to stop feeling like they're a part of the problem and really feel like they're becoming a part of the solution?
I think the choices you make are important. We talked a little bit about certainly your diet can make you a lot healthier, and by doing that, there's a benefit that you're also helping the planet. I think at the same time, I would say just becoming more present. We talked about gratitude, because when you're present and you're grateful for the little things, like the bees that, without the bees, there'd be no pollination, no healthy food. And so what does that mean? Hey, plant a pollinator-friendly garden. Take out that lawn and grow your own food. You don't have to ship tomatoes from Mexico that are sprayed with pesticides. Anybody can grow a tomato, even on your back porch in a pot. That's right. So those are major things. And if you have children, give them the gift of seeing where their food comes from. It doesn't come in a shrink-wrapped piece of plastic, So I would just say, be present, create a garden, be aware of the little things, cherish the little things in life. It'll make you happier and healthier.
When did your parents pass away? Like how much of your career did they get to see? Because it's
it was like in the early 90s. So I was doing okay, and I think they were proud. But they were like blue collar workers.
Okay.
My dad was like a tool and die maker in aerospace, and my mom was a cook. But for them, they just wanted to know: are you getting a steady check?
I have a grandma. All she ever asked me. Are you doing okay, Richard? Are you got enough food? You got enough food? Are you making enough money?
Right. Yes. So success is a steady job.
Yeah.
Now we've all evolved. If you're an entrepreneur, you're self-employed, you're a business guy. That's almost like better. But they had no concept of what that was.
Well, that's what they clearly rubbed off on you in a huge way, where you learned the great lesson from them of enjoying the simplicity. But I'm just worried at the same point where they're like, Louie, get a job, for God's sake. What are you doing?
I know. But I got a lot of, I think, perseverance and determination from them. And that's what you need to succeed in business and in filmmaking.
100%, for sure. So, final thoughts that you have. You could share anything that you want, no rules here, but anything that you would share either with creatives that want to follow in your footsteps, or just anyone who's been seduced by the beauty and magic of this planet that wants to make a difference.
Yeah, it's a great question. I say share the beauty and share the love, however, whatever mode that takes, whether it's like, imagery or poetry or helping other people in terms of doing service. It is a bit of a cliche, but cliche is something that's a truth told many, many, many times, is to use beauty to share love. Mm. And there's so many ways I think we can all do that. Let's reflect that in each other. Again, going back to the healing of your body, the self-healing. if you have a forward positive intention that life is good, that today's going to be a great day, then you're doing a lot to, make your body healthy. And so in a way, it's a selfish thing. I say self-care equals world care, because you can't fix the world unless you take care of yourself. But by taking care of yourself, you are healing the world, and you're healing the people that are close to you. Because if you're happy and healthy, then that's just going to rub off on your friends and family.
I love that. So share that. Actually, personally, feels really good to me. Part of the reason I started this podcast and this challenge and everything that I'm doing now is like, I need to do more, I got to make a difference. And because leading up to this, all I've done for years now is I just share the beauty that I'm so grateful to see every day. And I have two audiences, basically. One are crazy dolphin and whale people like me. And then there's the other audience, which to me is more interesting. It's like you said, it's the people that would never have the opportunity to go out in the water and see what I see. And like you mentioned, the kids that live 15 minutes inland that never have been to the ocean, which happens all the time. So it makes me feel good to know that just sharing the beauty, sharing the love is a big part of what you just answered. So thank you for that. And on that, it always boils back to love. So perfect ending to a wonderful conversation. Louie, I appreciate you. I really appreciate the time. I know that people will get a lot from this conversation. We'll share all the links to all your projects and everything else that you're working on. And I hope I look forward. Well, maybe one day you and I will get to smoke a joint somewhere on the beach. That would be really fun when the world gets back to normal.
I love that. That'd be great. All right.
Your best.
Take care, Rich.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.